DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen released a statement yesterday saying the migrant caravan is, quote, far larger, more organized than previous ones. Earlier, I sat down with the Secretary to talk about this and so much more. And I guess now with Secretary Nielsen. Madam Secretary, good to see you. Let's talk first about the weekend. Let me quote one Border Patrol chief, Carla Provost. Our agents were being assaulted. A large group rushed the area, throwing rocks and bottles at my men and women, putting them in harm's way, and numerous other similar reports. How bad was it?
Well, you know, Sean, first of all, let me just say this is a testament to the training and professionalism of the Border Patrol that no one was hurt. We had 1,000 people rushing the border in a very violent and lawless way. We will not stand by as our Border Patrol are attacked, so they defended themselves. Yeah,
well, I don't know if they have any choice. The thing is, we see now that the mayor, interestingly, of Tijuana said, excuse me, Trump was right, this is an invasion, and they have now had a lot of issues that they've had to deal with. But the migrants, the caravan, are still coming, and they're coming in bigger numbers. What if larger numbers of people rush the border? Are you confident you're prepared?
We were prepared this time. We will be prepared for any additional migrants. The president has made it quite clear we will not tolerate illegal or violent entry into our country. So this time he talked about it for a month in advance as the caravans were making their way up. He raised awareness. He called in the military. He called in Constantino Wire. We hardened the ports. We called in additional law enforcement, state and local and federal. And we were prepared. We will be prepared. We will not allow illegal entry into our country.
One thing the president said, why, if they're going to be seeking asylum, they're going to not be in this country or allowed in this country while whatever process goes forward. One of the problems has been people cross the border, they claim asylum, they get a court date, they're released into America, and they never show up again. So how insistent is the president that they stay in Mexico, and how are relations with Mexico, considering they were told a long time ago they should be dealing with this?
Yeah, you know, this is an important point that you raised, Sean. Ultimately, we only see about 9%, 10% of Central Americans who make an asylum claim actually be granted asylum by an immigration judge. And that's really important. That's really important to put in perspective. So 90% of those making asylum claims are not making a claim that can be honored under the statutory framework within the United States. It's not a valid reason for asylum. You've heard me say it before. If you're coming to get a job, that's not a claim for asylum. If you're coming to be with your family, that's not a claim for asylum.
Isn't it likely they're going to be coached? And if they really wanted asylum, didn't Mexico offer them work permits to work in South Mexico, and that was apparently rejected by most? And how many people are we now talking about in the remaining caravan still making its way north?
So we believe there'll be about 10,000 ultimately. There's between 8,000 and 10,000 now. But you're exactly right. The government of Mexico offered everyone asylum. They also offered work permits. That's why this caravan is very different than ones we've seen in the past. Not only is it violent, but to the extent that it claims that its members would like to seek asylum, they've been offered asylum, but they've turned it down in Mexico.
Let me play a shot from 60 Minutes. This was Scott Pelley, and the argument is about the separation issues and how there was a warrant for 1 3-year-old. I don't want to get your response to it. The president tweeted out, and we have images of even young people when Obama was president that are behind fences. They would say it's cages if it was Donald Trump. I want to get your reaction to that. And wasn't it President Trump that stopped the practice through an executive order?
Sean, it was, but I'm so disappointed in that piece. That is journalism. That's not journalism. That's factually incorrect. We did not have a policy to separate families from children. What the president said, what all presidents have said before him, is we will enforce the law. This president takes that very seriously. So what you saw was as we enforce the law against those who chose to enter illegally, mind you, not go legally to a port of entry, but enter illegally, they were prosecuted. And because of that, if they had children with them, so as not to put children in a custodial jail, they were separated and put in the good care of HHS. Yeah, 60 Minutes, they need to go back and check their facts, and they should have taken more time to understand how the immigration laws of this country work.
Big news this weekend. The migrant caravan actually exists. It's right across the U.S. border in Tijuana, Mexico, causing huge problems for that city. That may be a surprise to you because you've been hearing for weeks and weeks that the caravan wasn't real, and you'd have to be a right-wing bigot to think it was. Then they told you it's so far away that it's irrelevant. Well, then on Sunday, that irrelevant imaginary migrant caravan attacked American border guards. And that may surprise you more still because you were told the caravan was entirely harmless. And again, if you believed otherwise, you're a bad person. Well, soon, a news story, we don't know what it is, but we can be sure there is one, will come to dominate the headlines, and the migrant caravan will be mostly forgotten. Even if the border crisis remains unresolved, the press, the public, likely the president too, will have moved on. But we want to pause just for a moment before that happens, that inevitably happens, and look back and consider how this story was handled by the press, because we think it matters. Now, the story evolved rapidly, and the media's official story evolved just as rapidly. But were their descriptions about what was happening factually on the ground true? Tonight, we want to investigate that. This is not a partisan question, by the way. It's about the future of the country. For a free society to function, the press doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be better than a propaganda outlet. Are they? Let's break it down with Buck Sexton. He's a former CIA analyst and host of the Buck Sexton Show, and he joins us tonight. Buck, thanks a lot for coming on. You've been following this really closely. You had a really, I thought, incisive breakdown of the coverage, and so I want to put these questions to you. This is claim number one. The migrant caravan, we were told, is mostly women and children who pose no threat to anybody. Oh, the talking point, you remember. Was it true?
No. In fact, a vast majority of them are clearly what we would have called in the agency military-age males. And these are guys mostly in their 20s and 30s. And that was apparent, Tucker. I mean, there are the misreporting that you could expect from people making an honest mistake. And then there's a lot of journalists gathered together, because I've been talking to journalists all throughout this caravan's progression, and there's just been this march of lies. There have been some people telling the truth, but all you have to do is be there and you see it's guys. This is mostly guys. There are some women and children there, but the focus on it is clearly dishonest.
Of course. Claim number two. The caravan, we were told again and again, is mostly comprised of genuine asylum seekers seeking refuge in the U.S. Yeah, it's our fault for not welcoming them because they're sincere asylum seekers. Is that true?
No, it's a scam. And people know it's a scam based on the percentage of individuals in the past who have come and tried to claim asylum in this way, and the fact that they're being coached to lie. This is actually a form of fraud. When you say that I'm in imminent fear of my life because people along the way have said, this is what you have to say to get into the asylum process, you can later be adjudicated, you're lying to people in a vast majority of these cases. And by the way, if just being from Honduras, for example, means you're in such threat of violence that you could get asylum, then the whole country would qualify for asylum. So this is a scam, and people realize that now, but the media was pretending all along that it is not.
That is such a good point. Why doesn't the whole country qualify for asylum? I'm sure we'll hear soon that it does. Claim number three. There are no criminals in this caravan. Oh, how do the dumb people get on TV? But they do. Was that true? There are no criminals. There are more mothers than monsters.
An official statement yesterday from Immigration and Customs Enforcement says about 600 known criminals, by the way. So these are people that we are sure have a criminal record apart from trying to cross the border and perhaps throw some rocks at some federal agents. And, oh, by the way, I remember speaking to a journalist early on in this, Tucker, said, pretty sure there are some criminals because there are a whole bunch of guys covered in MS-13 tattoos, which are very prominent, who are marching along with the caravan, too. So this was known from the beginning, but people chose to focus on other things.
Were they MS-13 mothers, not monsters, or were they men?
I suppose that's possible, but certainly the media was trying to find a way to avoid the fact that there were some bad folks among this whole crew.
They were lying. Claim number four, and this comes from a former commander-in-chief. The caravan doesn't matter, and you're a bad person for worrying about it because it's very far away.
They're telling you the existential threat to America is a bunch of poor refugees 1,000 miles away.
This group of folks, we don't even know where they are. They're way down there.
They're way down there. We don't even know where they are, Buck.
Buses and trains exist in Mexico, which I think journalists know, especially journalists who are in Mexico reporting on this, but there was always this, well, it's going to take them forever to march. No, what they did is they, by the way, with some help, got on buses, trains, other modes of transportation, got through to the border. By the way, if they were actually refugees, as Obama says, they should claim refugee status in the first country they arrive in where they are no longer under mortal threat. Mexico has offered them asylum. They've said no, because they're not refugees. They are just people that want to get to the front of the line for immigration.
Such a great point. Jorge Ramos of Univision came on this program to present claim number 5, that the caravan received no external support.
I know that there are fake stories in the United States saying that these people were funded by George Soros and by Democrats or by Nicolás Maduro from Venezuela. If they really finance these people, it was a scam. I've been talking to people here in Chiapas who don't have a single dollar, Tucker, to buy a bottle of water. So there's no financing here.
No financing at all. And by the way, you're immoral if you claim otherwise.
It's a lie. I've talked to journalists who are seeing people handing out food, gathering donations together so they can buy food and equipment. When you got 6,000 to 7,000 people together, that's going to be a difficult logistical challenge unless there are people who are there to provide support, and there clearly are people providing support. So again, if journalists wanted to know this stuff, Tucker, some of them do, but they just don't get as much airtime at places like CNN and MSNBC, they could find out. But they don't want to know. They just want to present people getting tear gassed, mothers and children. If you don't like this, you're a monster, when the reality is this is a massive scam. There's a lot of outside help, and there are laws that are being broken here.
And finally, we have the sixth claim, that deploying troops to the border was wrong, but it was also completely unnecessary. As a New York Times cartoonist put it, troops sign up to fight in an obscure country in the Middle East, not to guard their own country's border. Kamala Harris agreed with that. So why aren't they in Syria where they belong?
Also, why can't Senator Harris call down to Border Patrol and say, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that matter, do you think it's helpful? Because the answer is yes, because I've spoken to Border Patrol, and they say that the logistical support that military was giving them was, in fact, very much needed because this caravan was arriving, and there were real concerns that they would try to overrun the border, which, Tucker, is exactly what they did do. So we've just had this progression of lies all along the way, and at every phase, it seems the media always gets it wrong in one direction, and that is somehow we're exaggerating this threat when, in fact, we're underestimating the reality of how big this problem is going to get.
A precise, fact-based summation, and we're grateful for it. Buck Sexton, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Tucker.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.